Success Story Day here on Inspired Coach Podcast. Welcome everyone. We have a wonderful coach, a beautiful you, award-winning alumni ahead for you today. And this episode feels very special because it's also our final one of our debut year here on the airwaves for Inspired Coach Podcast for 2023. So before I wrap up the year and give you a big thank you for being here with us, let me introduce you to today's wonderful guest and our success story feature. It is Dr. Kate Cashman. Kate is a speaker, an award-winning speaking and leadership coach, and an educator, and she helps executives and entrepreneurs find their voice, get visible, and grow their careers and businesses. Kate is the speaking and co-curator for TEDx Hobart. She's been a lecturer. She was a lecturer for over 14 years, and you're going to hear more about her journey with that today. And she also owns a yoga and Pilates studio in Tasmania, Australia, just in case she wasn't lusciously full and busy enough in life. She's also a mum and many other things as well. You know, I love Kate's success story so much. Kate comes from a very highly academic background, and I know that you're going to love hearing about the wobbles and concerns and things that popped up for her moving from being a highly respected academic in her field into a completely different field like coaching. And yet, is it a completely different field? Well, it might not be as much as it might look like that on the surface. Kate has gone on after studying with us here at Beautiful You to establish an incredibly thriving, amazing, wonderful business. And I know that you're just going to learn so much from her today. And in particular in this episode, I love her thoughts around the areas of confidence and courage and what those things mean to her. As I mentioned at the top of this episode, this is our final sharing with you of 2023. And we are about to take a break over what is the summer period here in Australia. And we're all looking forward to that very much. But it would be remiss of me on behalf of the entire Beautiful You Coaching Academy team to not say thank you to each and every one of you who has listened to either 1, 5, 7, or all of our episodes of the podcast this year. It took us a number of years to get with the program and get this out to you, but I am so glad that we finally did. We receive messages, emails, comments every single week from people all over the world who are already established coaches, who are training with us, who are thinking about becoming a coach, about how incredibly inspirational and helpful the podcast is to their life and to their business as well. And that's exactly why we wanted to bring this to you. You know, it takes a lot of work and effort and time and money and energy to put out a podcast. And so seeing you, loving you, witnessing you, if you are one of those people that does that, then you know the amount of work that these take. But they're also a labor of love and one of sacred service. And so we are just so glad that you have loved and embraced Inspired Coach Podcast as much as you have. And we are looking forward to an absolutely bumper and beautiful year with every single one of you in 2024. We have already started recording episodes. They are already in the pipeline, ready to go for you when we return next year. Be safe, be well until we hear you, see you, feel you on the airwaves again in 2024. Thank you so much for the gift of your listening hearts. Kate Cashman, welcome to Inspired Coach Podcast. I'm so delighted to have you on as our guest today.
Thank you so much for having me, Julie. I feel very honoured to be sharing more about my coaching journey.
Well, this is going to be a wonderful conversation because you are a wonderful person and you have been a Beautiful You alumni coach now for many, many years. And we're incredibly proud of everything that you have done and achieved. You're one of our award-winning coaches. You have spoken at our Inspiration Day in Hobart before. You are from the beautiful Isle of Tasmania. And it really is beautiful down there. For anybody that's never been to Tasmania, please put it on your bucket list. It is one of my favourite places in the world, let alone Australia. And Kate, you have just had the most interesting, wonderful journey as a coach. I'd love for you to take us back, because you have not been a coach your entire professional career. You have, in fact, done many interesting and varied things before your coaching business began to take off. Take us back to the time in your life when the idea about training to become a life coach first came to you.
Thanks, Julie. So I think for me, the moment was when I actually engaged a coach, and that person was somebody that I knew. She had just finished her coaching training and was looking for people to do some pro bono coaching with her. And I was at a point where I was studying my PhD and I was, becoming a forensic criminologist, which is such a fancy title, but essentially I was in a law PhD and I was working in forensics, and I was really, really stuck at a point where I was almost ready to submit, but I was stopping myself, and I knew that I was blocking myself. And despite lots of encouragement from supervisors, I just couldn't get over it. So it came at a time where I was really struggling, and I did this, these sessions with this coach, and we talked about things that just made my heart sing, and I felt so seen. And it was, we came down to the fact that I had a real block around being an expert and being referred to as an expert. And when you do a PhD, that's what everyone calls you. And so I didn't feel expert enough. And I talk a lot about this now when I do imposter complex work, but I wasn't expert enough to submit the PhD, and I needed to do more research, or I needed to talk to more people. And so she sent me on my way. One of my actions on one of my sessions was about talking to a so-called expert about, how will I know? And that expert said to me, "Oh, Kate, I've never felt that way. You just need to progress despite not feeling that way, because you might not ever feel that way." And so within 6 weeks, my PhD was was submitted. And so that block, I'd held that block. I was at that point for 9 months. And so a coach changed my life. And I thought, hang on, these are the conversations that I love to have with people. This level of self-awareness we need to have in our own lives, and I want to facilitate that. So I went from getting through that process of using this coach, helping me with that block, to studying with Beautiful You. And I never considered anywhere else. I found Beautiful You and felt completely at home, and I knew deeply in my bones that that's where I wanted to learn to be a coach. And so I dove straight in, knowing what it had done for my life, and knowing that I really wanted to do that with other people.
Amazing. Thank you so much for sharing that with us, Kate. And I know that you are not the only person who has had that trajectory of hiring a coach for themselves and working with a coach and then going, hang on a second, this is pretty amazing. I love it for me, and I'm also loving what I'm seeing sitting on the opposite side of the table to me, or the screen to me. And so that's fantastic. Kate, I imagine though, I might have this wrong, but something tells me maybe not. It must have been quite a leap of faith and mindset for you to go from a very, very academic culture to studying to become a life coach, which, let's face it, a lot of people, even now today, think is very woo-woo, in inverted commas, their sort of expression, not mine,
Yes.
and really not that great and bit flippy and silly, talk to us about that. What was that experience
Yeah.
like?
Oh gosh, I just remember feeling like I had to justify myself a lot. And do you know, Julie, I actually found that most people lent in and didn't have the response that I thought that they would. So I spent all this time justifying my decision and explaining why I was doing this. But actually, the reality was most people actually felt deeply, they were interested and deeply interested and wanting to know more, because I think they respected me as a professional. And so they knew that I would have done my research and I would be doing things that were credible, and they, I think ultimately they all wanted to be seen as humans with human experiences. And sometimes academia is not that place. And so they felt that this experience might be leaning to that other part of them as a human. So they were quite respectful. But I remember I had to reframe this. I'm going to tell you the block that I had. I realized that the block that I had was, I'm too well educated. I'm too well educated to only be a coach, or I'm too well educated to share this with others, that I'm adding this to my repertoire. And, when I sat with that, like we do with our clients and like I do with my clients, I looked at whether that was actually true. And of course, there wasn't that level of truth to that. And I reframed that to, I'm using my education in incredibly unique ways every single day. Just like I use my corporate experience in that, in my leadership positions within universities, I use that every single day, even when I'm coaching people one-on-one. That's just part of who I am now and part of my skill set. And so it was a huge leap and there were mindset blocks, but I actually found I used so much of the great strategy and organization and skills that I had in the business end of my coaching experience, even though it was very, very different.
Yeah, thank you for sharing that with us, Kate. And, can I just say, you are obviously surrounded by some really amazing, open minded people there, because
Yeah.
there have been others that have made this leap from the world of corporate or academia or something very, very different to the world of coaching and personal development, and have been met with serious, have you lost it faces?
Yes.
It's
Yeah,
like, you've got to
definitely.
be joking sort of thing. And
Yeah,
so
I'm sure.
I am so
Yeah.
happy for you that that was not the case.
Yeah, I'm sure some people were thinking it around me. I'm sure, without a doubt. But I don't know. I don't know if they openly shared it with me. Not so memorable back in 2016 that I can remember them openly sharing it with me. So I was very lucky in that respect.
Amazing. Kate, you have taken some really interesting twists and turns with your coaching business over the many years that you have now been doing it. And I know that you are working in your business now full time, doing a combination of coaching and consulting and a variety of different incredible things. But where you are now, and I want to learn more about that in a moment, is not where you began. You, in fact, started out coaching in a completely different niche to the one that you are so wildly successful in now. And I think that this is a really important part of your journey and your success story, because sometimes I do think there is a bit of a myth or a narrative that runs out there that we can't change our niche, that we get locked in to a particular direction and that's it. And it isn't the case at all. And you are an amazing example of somebody who changed niches super considerably and experienced success in both. You didn't change because it was like the first one was a bomb. It wasn't at all, because you built something really amazing in that and then changed. So let's talk about this. What did you start out with? Where did you begin your coaching?
So I began my coaching at a time where I was juggling a lot of balls, and I was a relatively newish mother. I was finishing that PhD off, and I was lecturing and running other businesses. And I was desperate for a sense of rest and renewal. And so I actually started in that space. And so I pared everything back. And the journey that I'd been on was something that I was supporting a lot of people with. So I actually started in a rest and renewal space. And that's what I called myself. I was a rest and renewal coach. And so I was working with corporates from day one. I was always working with professionals and working to support those who felt like they were on that treadmill of life and just needed some support, but couldn't necessarily run off and, go away on retreat a couple of times a year. So they needed some strategies and they needed support around that. So I started doing that one-on-one, and I did a lot of corporate workshops. So my business has been very much a combination of one-on-one coaching and group work and facilitation from day one, because I'm an extroverted person, not so much as I was when I was younger, but I needed that people time. So running live events and being with people in person was always important. So I talked about rest and renewal and strategies and supporting ourselves emotionally and spiritually, as well as mentally and physically. That's where I started.
A beautiful, beautiful niche, and an area that I think is still growing in need and popularity. So, Kate, you began there and built that up really successfully for yourself in that space. Why the change?
Well, there were a number of reasons why the change, and I think partially because I reached a point in my life where I was being pulled. I actually felt like I was pulled to this new niche. I was being asked by new lecturers, Kate, can you please support me? I'm terrified of the teaching part. For me, my strengths, was in being I was an award-winning lecturer. So I was a great teacher. And so I had a lot of people ask me about speaking in public and about lecturing to groups of people and facilitating tutorials. And then I had business owners asking me about running workshops and doing speeches. And speaking was always part of my, speaking work. And so I sat down one day and said, this is part of my secret sauce. I've been a speaker since I was 14, competing in competitions, but being paid as a lecturer, which is a professional speaker. Speaking was my most incredibly aligned part, one of the most incredibly aligned parts in my business from day one. And so I realized, I almost woke up one day and went, I'm actually a speaker coach. This is what we need, more people to share their voices. And the amount of stuff I was hearing from people that just wasn't true about what made a great speaker, I just wanted to yell it from the rooftops. And I think that's when I realized that work was where I was feeling most lit up, and that the rest and renewal, I still have those conversations with people because they're so important. But I'm still working with corporates and professionals and business owners, but in this incredibly different niche that I adore. And I felt now realized that I was born to do that.
I think you're right about that. When I've never really thought about lecturers as being professional speakers, but that's exactly what lecturers are, just in a different context. And
Yep,
in many ways, so are teachers. Just,
absolutely.
using your voice, speaking, standing in front of people, communicating to groups of people. It's all part of it. And so the area that you're working in now is as a public speaking coach. I know you are the co-curator of TEDx Hobart, and you're helping people reach global stages with their voices. I know you help upcoming new coaches with their speaking, and business owners and many other people. And so I'm thrilled for you that you've found something that just feels so aligned for you. Was there any fears at all? I mean, you talk about this pull in this direction to this form of coaching, which sounds really strong. But did you have some fears and doubts or concerns pop up about changing into such a dramatically different niche, given that you'd already built up such a successful business?
Absolutely. I was like, this is all new offerings. This is new copy. This is new website stuff. Like all I felt was the enormity of what I had to update. And I remember my husband saying to me, Kate, they're details that we can handle. You need to trust this process. So it could be that someone wants to change their niche because they're in a different season of their life, and what they've been coaching in doesn't suit that new season, or it doesn't light them up as much, or it might be because they're feeling pulled like I was. But I think when I think about that time for me, yes, it was very overwhelming initially. I needed to break it down to what actually needs to change first, then what needs to change second, and then we sort of went from there. And I always had those stories around, starting again. I've got to start again. But I was coaching for 4 or 5 years before I changed. We're never starting completely again. So many of the things that I used in my previous business, I was still running workshops in organizations. I still do that now. I still speak at conferences like I did before. It was just different content. And so that overwhelm, I had to sit with it and break it down a little bit. And it did take a little while, obviously, to build up again. It wasn't that I went from earning the same amount of money to earning the same amount of money, but I was really gentle with myself, and I didn't expect that overnight. But because this is a more aligned niche for me now, and because I felt on fire with that actually came more quickly than I expected, because I was throwing myself into it more. And the other hesitation that I had that I'll talk to is that part of me went, often we realize, or we don't realize, that our special sauce is actually unique. So for me, speaking had always been, I've worked on it so much over those years, for more than 20 years. But I, in my head, was like, but this is something that comes naturally to me. I can't teach this. I can't support others with this because this is just not a special skill. And then everyone's like, no, people are terrified of this, Kate. They create so many stories about what it means to be a great speaker, and I can't do this because of X, Y, Z. So I had to step back and realize that, yes, there's actually a method that I use. Yes, that process, it didn't just intuitively come, that actually sometimes the things that do feel the most easeful are actually a sign that maybe we go in that direction, because not everyone feels that way. Does that make sense?
It makes complete sense, Kate. Absolutely. And I'm so grateful to you for sharing this aspect of your journey, because as I said before, I think sometimes, especially new and upcoming coaches, can get quite tangled in their niche beliefs and what they think about that. And so it's wonderful to hear different stories of truly successful coaches such as yourself. where the trajectory to success is not linear. It's not from here to here in one direct line, that it actually involves lots of loops in different ways, which is what it does for most of us. And look, I also just love what you say as well, is that it truly does not matter what fork in the road we might arrive at and choose a different path or a different decision or go in a different way. We never ever starting from scratch, because every client we see, every interaction we have in our business, every decision we make builds us up in some way. Or even if there is a huge, mistake of some kind or lesson of some kind that hasn't been particularly pleasant, we learn from that and we gain strength from it and can keep going. So I think there's so many important points there. So thank you for that. Kate, I would love to ask you, when you look back over the trajectory of your now many, many years of coaching, that you're doing this wonderful, amazing, life-affirming work with people, helping them to share their voices with the world. What would you consider to be some of the things that you believe you have personally contributed to your own success? Like, not success factors outside of you or anything like that, but what have you done? What can you as Kate Cashman own really proudly in saying, Julie, this is what I did really well, and that's really helped, me to be where I am now?
So I think, Julie, for me, people always make assumptions, often about people who are outwardly very confident, that they must be feeling really confident. And I did lots of things that I wasn't confident about because they were new. I was doing them for the first time. But one thing I always did is I didn't focus on confidence. And this is another full circle moment for me, reflecting on that, because a lot of the core of what I do as a speaker coach is I support people to be more courageous. Not necessarily more confident. I think we always have that back to front. So when I think about me and what has supported me to start my business, to grow my business, to change the trajectory of my business, I've been really darn courageous. I know when I haven't felt confident, and usually I've taken steps to do something anyway, and then recalibrated, worked out what I've learned, and then gone again. So I'm a really courageous person, usually, that I would say that. And I think I had that. A lot of people might say, oh no, you're a confident person, but I wasn't always confident in doing new things. I don't think we ever are the first time. So that was a big one. And so I was really courageous. The other thing was that I think the thing for me and my brain and the way I need to work is I set accountability well in my business. So for me, anytime I was doing something that was new, or I wanted to do, but I was scared, or I found myself procrastinating, I became really good at finding champions to help champion me and gentle accountability partners, gentle or harsh if I needed them. So I would set a date or make an appointment or say that I would launch something sometime publicly. Usually it had to be public. And then I would say, okay, now I have the accountability I need to do it, because otherwise it's just a never-ending cycle of I'm going to, and I needed that. So I did that quite well. I found people to hold me accountable, not just coaches, mentors, friends. And at the end of the day, I think success just comes from whatever measures you can do to keep going. Because I think if you keep going, you're learning new things, you're tweaking new things, you're repeating the things that you really like. Anything that can keep you going will lead to some measure of success, not just financial. And for me, it was not about the finances necessarily. I didn't quit my job in the early stages of my business and just throw myself in, because who needs plan B? That was not success for me. For me, it was, just trusting that I could grow every step of the way. I think they were the biggest things for me. And the other thing I would say is saying yes. I said yes a lot. Kate, can you please come and share with our group of directors on rest and renewal? Was I intimidated? Absolutely. I've been working with corporates now for 8-9 years in that space, and I've been intimidated more times than I can count, but I always say yes if it's within the realm of my wheelhouse, obviously, and then I work it out. So again, maybe that's linked to the courage piece. Yeah.
I think it is absolutely linked to the courage piece. It's like, say yes, and then I'll work it out. That's courage. That's the courageous way to go about that. Now, for other people, of course, that could just feel like it's going to set their nervous system on fire.
Completely.
And it's like, I need more information, or, Everyone is different with these sorts of things. And this is why success is something that is so personal. And it's why we love these stories here at Beautiful You, because everyone's build to that, version of that, experience of it, living it in their life and business is so incredibly varied and different. Kate, thank you so much for sharing your journey with us today. I particularly love that share at the end there. I'm not going to forget that anytime soon, everyone. I just want to remind you of what Kate was talking about there. Courage, confidence, accountability, saying yes. I feel like that's a mini masterclass in building your coaching business and moving forward with it in that way. Kate, you're doing such beautiful work in the world. We, of course, need more people to use their raw, authentic, vulnerable, truthful voices. And so thank you to you for working with people to make that possible for them.
Thank you so much for having me, Julie. It's wonderful work.
Oh, thank you, Kate. If you would like to learn more, everyone, about Kate's incredible work, you can, of course, find her at katecashman.com. And I just want to say, thank you again to Kate as a speaker and coach and facilitator for just being really open and honest with us about, the bumps and twists and turns and speaking about the change in her niche and the wobbles and all of those kinds of things. When we bring you these success stories here at Beautiful You, we don't want them to be sanitized in any way. And it's like, just tell us the formula for here to here or here to here. We actually really want to hear about the real behind the scenes stories and journeys. And that's exactly why we love bringing you these success stories so very much.